All right, we're back with the third installment, excuse me, the third installment of the flower blooming tutorial here. So let's pick up where we left off. So what we're going to do, we want to add a few more little things to our petals here to give it a little bit more detail. And then we're going to simulate it in Vellum. So the first thing I want to do is I want to come back up here before we put down the pin. And I want to put down a point VOP. And let's call this noise. Okay. And let's dive in there. And in our noise, let's put down a turbulent noise. And go like this. Okay. And then I want to put down a multiply, an add. And what we're going to do is take this turbulent noise, put it in here, and we're going to put the P in add, multiply it there, and then put this back out to position. So what we can do with this is, well, for now, let's just connect this to the add so I can show you what's happening. And let's come back up to just this part so we can see it. So you can see we have some noise. It looks like shit. That's fine. First thing I want to do is make this a 3D noise. That'll make it a little bit better. And let's make it zero-centered Perlin noise, like that. Okay. And then I want to give it a higher frequency in the X, I believe. Something like this. And let's bring the amplitude like way down. So basically I want to try to make some like long vertical lines in it. So let's give it a value of like 46. And then maybe this can be like 3.6, 7.6. I think these are just some values I found that worked, but you might need to play around with it a little bit. And then you can, of course, adjust this a little bit. 0.42, I don't know, something like that. And then let's middle mouse click on the amplitude and hit promote parameter, because I want to be able to keyframe this when we come up here. I want to be able to keyframe this from up here. Okay. And then the other thing I want to do is I don't want any noise down here. I want all the noise to be up at the tips. Now remember, we have this mask that we made from our distance along geometry. You can see it's, 1 up here and 0 down there. So we can use that. Let me just turn that off again. We can use that in this point VOP. So if we come back in, the reason I put down this multiply is so that we can multiply our mask. So let's bring in a bind and bind in our mask attribute. And then I want to multiply these here and then bring this back into add. So basically what that's doing is before, God damn it, before we even add this noise back into the position of our original geometry, we're multiplying it by our mask. At the bottom, it's 0. At the top, it's 1. So now we have some control over this. So if we come to our distance along geometry, we can, move this around so that we have noise closer to the bottom. The noise could be only at the top. I think something like this seems to work pretty well. Cool. God, that's something in my throat. Stupid. All right. So basically what I want this to happen, if you look at videos of actual flowers blooming, what happens is they start off without any noise, and then as they sort of come to rest in their final fully grown position, they have a little bit of wrinkles in them. So let's do that. So this will be our de-intersection phase, and then they're all going to start folding back in. So basically I want probably, how much did I time shift this by? So I think maybe like here, let's try keep framing this. Let's do a value of 0.126, and then over 48 frames, we'll bring the amplitude down to 0. So basically, as it grows up, it's going to get more wrinkly like that. if that makes sense. Okay, and I want to try and make it so we don't have any intersections. We'll see how that works. Okay, cool. So we're pretty much ready to simulate. We have our pinpoints. Let's come down here and let's put down some vellum stuff. So let's go vellum cloth and plug that in. Oops. Here. And let's do vellum solver. Okay, plug these three in here. 2, 3. Come on, solve. Okay, cool. So the first thing I want to do in the vellum cloth is I want to, let's see, put my edge length scale down to like 0.2. If you get out of here, fuck out of here. If you visualize the thickness on this, you can see there's these little like balls that show up to kind of show you how thick your cloth is going to be. So if you make it huge, these are going to be like really thick, as if this was like a towel or something, like a really thick piece of cloth. But these are really thin, so I want them to behave that way. So a little bit smaller, like 0.2 would be good. And then of course I want to pin my points, because without the points, they're not going to move along with the animation. So remember, in the previous ones, we've set up our pin points. Let's change this to soft and match animation. And let's just see what that does right now if we just hit play. What is the deal? Duplicate ID attributes detected. Okay. Okay. Let's put down a attrib delete, and let's put that after the exploded view. And because I think when there's something we did up here, it's the mops. Like the mops remap fall off, or one of these mops fall offs automatically adds an ID attribute, I think. Yeah, there's an ID attribute, and it doesn't like that. It wants to make, because it's going to give it its own ID attribute in here. So if we come in here, just delete ID, there, that should take care of it. Okay, let's see what this does. Forgot to turn off gravity. So, okay, you can see it is working, but we don't want gravity. So let's turn that off. Come over here. Just make this 0. And let's see. It should all start dragging towards the center by the pinpoints. Okay, so it is working. It's doing what I want it to do, but it's not doing exactly what I want to do yet. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to add a constraint tag. So right now, all that's happening is, if you look at this pinpoints up here in our group, it's basically just pulling all of the pedals towards the center by these things, but it's not going to actually do any of the animation that we've made with our little rig that we set up. It's not going to do any of that until we constrain it with a constraint tag or a constraint node. So let's do vellum, damn it, constraints. Okay, and plug that in here. And the type of constraint we want is a pin to target. So come up here, pin to target. And I want to do, the pin type should be soft. And I want it to be match animation. And let's see, is there anything I changed here? I think I want this to be 0, 3 zeros and a 1. Yep, something like that. These are all settings that you're going to have to play around with a little bit, depending on what you've built. But I found that having somewhat softer constraints helps a little bit. If you have your constraints too high, it kind of forces everything. It makes everything really stiff and doesn't feel very organic. Okay, cool. And then I think that's all I did. Pin constraints, yeah. Okay, cool. So let's see what this does. Let's just hit play. Okay, so that's doing it better. You can see that the pedals aren't just like flopping over backwards like they were before. So it's going to run its little de-intersection thing here. And it should work. Okay, cool. I'm going to kind of come to a rest for a second. Okay, and then they kind of start folding in. Okay, so it's working. Something else that is a little trick that I learned that is extremely helpful, and this is not in my free YouTube tutorial version because I didn't know this at the time, but there's these really handy attributes that you can use in Vellum to help with collisions. So if we come up back here to our out leaf area, let's put down a wrangle. We're gonna define two attributes here. So there's these two attributes, and I only want them to be defined on the pin group. So basically here, we're only going to have this attribute be here. Okay. So the first one is called I at disable self, and we're going to set that equal to 1. The second one is called I at disable, you got to spell it right. That would help. Disable external. And I think, yeah, there are two E's, external, and we're going to set that to 1 also. So what this does, disable self means that it's going to disable self collisions here. So it's not going to, like, if these points of contact sort of fold over each other, they're going to pass right through each other. They're not going to collide. And then disable external means that there aren't any external collisions here either. So basically all of these pin points are going to be sort of just like ghost geometry that really isn't in the simulation at all. So the reason for that is because when we have this de-intersection simulation, this part here, all of these points kind of come together to occupy the same space. And they're all kind of overlapping with one another. And a lot of times Vellum kind of gets really jittery and it gets all messed up because it's trying to like force these pieces of cloth into the exact same spot and make them collide with each other. So if you just disable all the collisions for just these bottom parts here, nobody's going to really notice that. Like you're never going to look at that part. You're only going to look at the top part. So they are going to intersect a little bit down here, but that's okay because it's going to make your simulation a lot smoother. It's not going to be all jittery and shitty. So if you just remember these two attributes, disable external and disable self, those are things that Vellum recognizes, and we'll just write disabled collisions here. It'll recognize those things and make it work. Okay, I think maybe my plants are a little too wrinkly still, so maybe let's keyframe that. Let's go back up to frame 1 and maybe bring this down a little bit to like, I don't know, maybe not, maybe it's fine, whatever. Fuck it, let's try it. Okay, let's go back into our Vellum settings here. So if we come to this, something else we want to do is we want to dive inside, and there is a very handy thing called Vellum Rest Blend. This is like this is one of the magic tricks for flowers here, basically. So what this does is it basically, well, let's set it up first and then I'll explain what it's doing because it'll be a little easier to explain. So let's change this to each frame. And then I want to come up here and let's put a little null here. And we're going to call this out. I don't know, flower. Let's call this flower guide. Okay, let's just copy it, come back here, and then I want this to be the source should be a SOP, and let's put that in there. Oops, no. What have I done? Get that out of there. Put it in here. There we go. And then the groups I want it to affect are bend and stretch. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to blend a value of 1 means it's going to blend it's going to do exactly whatever this SOP is doing. A value of 0 means that it's not going to do anything what this SOP is doing at all. So basically, if we come back up here, we have this animation here, and it's animating the way we want it to. It's kind of folding in on itself, but it's not colliding with itself. There's no like wind, there's no organicness. It's just this sort of dumpy animation we made, very basic. But what we can do with this is if we set this blend value to something like 0.6, what that's going to mean is that it's going to try about 50%, about 60% of the time, it's going to try to like make it do exactly what the animation is doing. And then we still have 40% of the vellum just kind of doing what it's doing. So you can find a nice value. Like if you want it to do exactly what the animation is doing, just leave it at 1. If you want to introduce some other forces like wind and drag and stuff like that, it's better to do like a lower value a little bit, because then it looks a little more organic. So let's put some pop drag in here too. So pop drag, make it like, I don't know, give it like an air resistance of 3, something like that. And then let's see, I think, are there any other, I'm trying to think if there's any other things I did. I'm not sure. So let's just put down a vellum IO here, and let's just run a little cache, and I'll pause the thing here and we'll see what we have. Okay, so I've got the sim running. I cached it, and then I did a little flipbook here so we could see what it looks like. And I'm pretty happy with it, actually. It came out pretty well on the first try. So there we go. Everything de-intersects, kind of hangs out for a second, and then it all just closes. Cool. So basically we have that, and then we're just going to reverse it. So we'll just do a time shift, and then we have this nice flower blooming animation. There's obviously a few more things we want to do because it's still kind of janky looking here. We want to subdivide that a little bit. But the cool thing is, you can add in stuff like wind. So let's try that. I just want to put in like a pop of wind and see what happens. Let's give it like, a wind velocity of like 0.1 in Y. Let's give it like a amplitude of 0.3 and a swirl size of, I don't know, let's just do 2. Something like a really small amount of wind. I don't know, I'm just kind of messing around. Let's see what that does. Okay, so I ran a little simulation. Again, got a little flipbook here. Let's see if the wind is working. So yeah, you can see there's kind of like a little breeze going through it a little bit more. It feels maybe a little bit more organic. See that there? That's kind of nice. So you have control over things like that too, which is really cool. Okay, so I'm gonna say I'm decently happy with that. Let's move on with the tutorial here. So the next thing we want to do, this is obviously playing the wrong direction. We want to reverse it. So let's see. First of all, let's figure out where our end state is going to be. I think that's going to be like here, maybe like 120. So let's put down a time shift, and let's do $frame plus 120. And then if we come back here, it should put that at frame 0. Okay, then I want to retime this. So let's put down a retime node. And let's see, I've got how many frames? Time shift, come on. Where is the last one? And there, 120. So I've got about 120 frames. So if in the retime node, I need to change the input frame range to 120. And then I want to do this by frame. And I want to, yeah, I think that's fine, basically. So what I want to do is on frame, let's see, let's find a good, I think I want to start from here, like right here. So maybe a frame 101. So on frame 1, let's delete this here. Let's change this delete channel. Why are you not deleting? Do as I say. There. Okay, 100. And then hit a keyframe. And then let's come out to frame 120. And let's change this to 1. Okay, so that time reverses it. So if we come in here and just set this back to linear, basically it's just the reverse of what we had before. I want a few other little things though. I want this to kind of slowly come to rest. So maybe like around here, let's hit Alt and click on your little timeline thing here. And you can, let's drag this out to like this and make it kind of, give it a little bit of a smooth landing curve here. Let's unhook these guys too. And my computer is running super slow right now, and I don't know why. It's really annoying. Why? Probably because I'm recording. No, untie. Everybody untie. Make that straight. Like this. And then have it kind of come in for a smooth landing. So it should basically just kind of ramp slowly to a stop. And maybe, you know, I don't think I even want this to open up all the way. I think I want some of these to still remain closed. So maybe at frame 98, so come in here, H on the keyboard, maybe this, if I alt click here, that's going to be my end point. So let's delete this guy and let's draw this way out to here. So that way it kind of slowly ungoes, and then it kind of slows to a stop here. Oh, looks like, if you notice here, it's kind of going under. We want this to be a flat line there, something like that. So should slowly come to a stop. Great. Okay, that's working. That's what I want. Now, how do we get rid of this crumpled garbage? I don't want to, it looks all janky. Let's put down a vellum post process. And then in that, let's do a spatial blur of like 0.099, something like that. And then the subdivision, let's change this to loop. So that makes everything nice and smooth. And then if you wanted to, you can extrude it by the thickness. So the thickness that we defined kind of gives it this extra little, some heft there. But I don't want these are not thick petals. These are supposed to just be really thin, kind of see-through petals. And I want to make sure that we still have the attributes we want. So we've got mask. Let's see what that. Why is this? Yeah. So we can see mask. We can use that in our shading. What else do we have here? Let's turn off mask. Mask 2. I don't know what that is. We should have mops fall off 2. Mops fall off. So we can use these in our shading here if we want. But let's turn that all off for now. And let's move on to shading here. So let's put down a normal. Oops. If it doesn't already have a normal, does it? I don't see one. So put down normal. Okay. And then we're going to just do a null. And we'll call this alt flower 01. Okay, cool. Great. So let's set up some lights and some cameras and stuff. So let's put down a camera. Let's jump into it. Put the little lock icon and move it around so we have something like kind of looking down at it like this. Something like that. Okay, cool. And we can uncheck that guy there. And then let's see, I think I want it to be, yeah, I think a view of 50 is probably fine. Okay, and let's put down a dome light. And I think for my dome light, I used, let's see, I think I just used a Grayscale Gorilla this guy here. It's this, oops, shit. It's HDRI Studio Volume 2. And let's just fire up the Redshift render viewer and see what we have. Okay, so let's move this around a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, -32. Oh, something like that. Okay, and then let's maybe bring the saturation down. I don't want it to necessarily be so blue. I want it to kind of just be grayish, something like that. And then something else I want to do is let's put down a spotlight, RS light. And let me come out of my camera here so I can see what I'm doing. And let's go light. Let's change it to spot. And then let's put down let's see, blooming flowers. Let's, under the transform, go to look at objects and then just drag this in here. So that way, whenever we move this around, it's going to look directly at the center, which is super nice. Okay, and let's bring the intensity way down to like 20. We can even bring the exposure down to like minus something like that. And then let's make the shadow, make the softness just a little, doesn't need this because right now it's super hard. I want the softness to be like, I don't know, 0.26, something like that. Let's give it a cone angle of, bring this down, something like 21. Bring this up to like 29. I don't know. These are just values I think I found that worked. And then, you know, actually, let's put down a null. We're going to call this look at. Look, damn it. Look at. And for this, let's change it. That way, we can manipulate it a little bit. Let's move it up. Probably have to refresh this. Yep. Okay. And then what we can do is just kind of move this around. I don't know, find a nice, oops, come on. Kind of get it aligned there. I don't know, you might have to just kind of play around with it, but basically I'm trying to get like some basic lighting with my HDRI, and then I want to use this spotlight to kind of light up the middle here. Something like that. Okay, let's try that. Let's just say that's good for now. Okay. And then let's make a material for this. So on our blooming flower, under render, let's type /matte/flower, which is a material that does not yet exist. So in our material context, we need to put down an RS material builder. We're going to call this flower. Cool. Okay. The first thing I want to do is bring in our, I think we have a distance attribute. Let's see what attributes we have here. We've got curve view, distance, mask, matte. So let's bring in RS point attribute and bring in dist. Okay. And let's just plug that directly into the base color and see what that looks like. Nothing. Ramp. Let's put a ramp in it. So what you can see when we move this around, this basically gives me a fall off from the bottom of the flower to the top of the flower. And so I can kind of color this based on whatever I want. So let's do, I don't know, let's play around with some of the settings. We got black to orange, black body, Civitas, whatever that is, grayscale, Inferno. That's kind of cool. Let's do something like, I don't know, plasma maybe? Yeah, and then we can kind of move these around a little bit to kind of get it to be more, like I think I want more blue at the bottom, make it kind of darker. I don't know, mess around, get something like that. Okay. And then what else can we do? Well, let's bring in another attribute. Let's bring in our mask attribute. And let's put a ramp in it as well. And let's do a color mix. So do the first one here. And then use this. And let's make something crazy here. Let's give this green just so we can see what we're doing. So we'll have to refresh this to pull this attribute in. So our mask now is basically, it's very similar. It's a value from the bottom to the top, kind of. But let's do, I don't know. Instead of doing a green here, let's basically put down a color correct. Should get that out of there. On this original color, plug this in here. And then let's, I don't know, change this to like 341 and I don't know, some different version of itself. And then we're kind of using this mask to mask between two different versions. I don't know, mess around, something like that. And then what else can we do? Well, let's plug this into, let's give it some scatter too. So plug this into the MS color. And then I want to, this is too shiny. Let's bring the reflection roughness way up. Something like 0.888, something like that. Let's bring the subsurface scatter. So for that, let's bring this up. And I think I want thin walled. So if you check this little box down here, thin walled, it works really well for when you have like a plane or something that's only one polygon thick. Like there's no thickness on this. We didn't check that add thickness box. So it works great for getting subsurface scatter to really thin surfaces like this. So, okay, cool. So something like, yeah, I don't know, 0.203, 0.203, something like that. And I usually like to put down a color correct in between these two, because right now we're piping in the same color into the base color as it is in the scatter color. But I typically like to change the scatter color just a little bit so that it scatters something slightly different. So 0.075. Ooh, why is that's weird? I don't know. Make it lighter. I don't know, something like that could be cool. Okay. And then what else can I do? Let's put down another color mix here. And plug this also into here. And then let's put down a Maxon noise. And let's just, for now, plug this into the mix, but then let's solo it so we can see what we're doing. And I like to use, let's try VL noise. That seems pretty good. And then something you want to do, since we do have a UV attribute on here, if we just leave it as is, when these petals animate, it's going to kind of move through the texture. It's not actually going to stick to it. So we want to make sure that the source is set to UV vertex attribute. And you can see that everything changes. And so we'll need to kind of adjust accordingly. So let's bring the scale, I don't know, let's see. Okay, so I just kind of played around. I moved some lights around. Feeling decently happy about that. So let's come back to our camera here. And let's go to the optical and let's kind of change the exposure a bit. Maybe make it a little darker. Let's do color correction. Let's make these highlights a little less bright, something like that. And then under optical, let's do enable bokeh. That always helps. Let's click our little focus thing on the middle, bring this down to like 4, maybe 2, something like that. We'll have to adjust the exposure accordingly. Maybe even less. Let's go like 0.5. That's starting to feel a little bit more macro. Something like that. Maybe we'll do 1. That's better. Have a little bit more in focus. So cool. That's pretty much it. So this is great because I like this setup. This is the basic setup. Obviously we can add a lot more to it, but I kind of wanted to give you guys a basic rundown of kind of how to make flowers. And this is it. And then in later tutorials, we're going to go back and we're going to kind of build upon this setup to make more complex stuff, different things. But this is cool because with this, because these are all UV'd, you have control over, you know, you can change the noise of stuff. You can do this whole, like, make these little lines in there, which is nice. You don't have to model that into the geometry. You can just do that all here, which is cool. I really like that. And then you know, obviously you have control over like the colors of the tips, and because we have these mask attributes, we can change, you know, make it more like really yellow on the tip, and I don't know, come in here, change this so that it's, what am I mixing here? Kind of more blue. I don't know, we have control over lots of stuff in here, which is really nice. Let's bring this up like that. See what that does. And change this color correction. What's this doing? That's cool. So I don't know, you have a lot of control over here. You can use these masks. You have mask distance, stuff like that. And then basically all you need to do is render it out. But that's pretty much it. So just kind of a rundown of what we did. Remember the secret kind of here is or one of the secrets is putting this disable collisions, disable external self, and then basically just putting it into Vellum and then constraining it to itself so that it does what your animation does. And that's pretty much it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions. And then of course, we'll keep building on this in future tutorials and make different types of flowers. Thanks.